Welcome, sisters, supporters, and sponsors to the Lirae Journey podcast. I am Hannah and my co-host.
Hey y'all, I'm Sherella, and we're excited to return for season 2. Our theme is To and From Black Women on Healing, Wellness, and Care. We will have sister circle conversations with Black women from various stages of life on personal, community, and professional roles. An aim of this season is to continue and start conversations on the meanings, experiences, and practices of healing, wellness, and care. Briefly tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you to this conversation. And anyone can start first.
Hey, I will start. My name is Esker-D Ligon. I am a nurse practitioner, certified in both primary care and mental health. My primary role as a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I've been doing this now for 17 years, altogether a nurse for about 24 years. In my personal life, currently, one of my biggest roles is as a family caregiver for my mom and her twin brother. Also involved in a sorority. Haven't been as active in community activities, of course, because of the pandemic, but I'll continue to seek out opportunities to at least provide financial assistance to community agencies that are in need and doing good work in the community. And on a more personal level, in the midst of everything going on, maintain a relationship with someone for about the past 4 years. And so in a nutshell, that's who I am. What brings me to this conversation, I was informed of this opportunity from one of my sisters that I've known for 20 plus years that I met in nursing school, Kim Scott, who we're talking about like different sister circles. There's a bunch of circles of friends that I belong to. And so she was the one who invited me and informed me of this opportunity. So thank you for the opportunity to be here and to participate. I went back and listened to some of your podcasts and love the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you again, Esker-D. It was wonderful to know a little bit about you so far. This is our first interaction, and that's what I love about having sister circles. You can always say, hey sis, can you introduce me to X and Y and Z? And you just meet so many amazing Black women. So it's always a great experience to be in conversation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sierra McKissick. I'm a behavioral and spiritual health specialist, which means I do a lot of program creation and working with companies on how they can embed wellness practices into their company model and values. Right now, I'm just excited to be back for another season of the Lirae podcast. I had the pleasure of talking with Sherella and Hannah last season, so I'm excited to talk more about sister circles and wellness in general and kind of dive into some of the things that make us tick and help us grow.
Well, hi, I'm Marcia E. Canton. I'm a professor emeritus from San Jose State University. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for over 40 years. I retired from San Jose State University in 1999, but I continue to teach at San Francisco State University in community health. That's my passion. Healthcare in nursing is my passion. I'm a member of 2 major sister circles, the Bay Area Black Nurses Association, and also the National San Francisco Business and Professional Women Organization. I also have my own company called Canton and Associates, where we do mentoring, training, and we work with sister circles, and we do mentoring in high school and higher education. And our goal is to increase the number of African American students who become successful in school at every level. So healthcare has always been my primary concern, and I'm delighted to be part of the Sister Circle today. Thank you.
I'm Jasmine Byrd. First and foremost, I'm a mother. So as you can see, I have quite a bit of activity around me because that is my first priority. But I'm Jasmine Byrd. I'm a communications professional. Currently, I am in the financial industry. I work for a local financial firm here in Baltimore, Maryland. I am delighted and honored to be amongst all of you sisters. I'm excited to get into the conversation that we'll be having today. I operate in sister circles everywhere. I'm a mother first, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. So my sister circles are very much just circles that I'm either born into or find my way into, and I'm very honored to be a part of that as well. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. It was great hearing all of you guys' accomplishments, and thank you guys for joining us today. And for part one of our conversation, we will discuss self-perspectives and sister circle experiences with our sister guests. When you guys hear the theme to and from Black women on wellness, healing, and care, what stands out for you and what comes to mind? And any one of you guys can jump in and start.
So I'll talk a little bit about this one first, if you guys will indulge me. I love sending cards to people. It's become like my thing. Everybody knows like you're probably going to see a card in the mail from me. And so when I hear to and from, I think of like a thinking of you card, or a hope you get well card, or just a note that shows like I see you. I'm thinking of you. You mean something to me. You're a valuable part of my world. And to hear that from Black women especially is just a tender moment for you to really embrace all of who you are and all of who we are as a collective. Of course, there are so many differences among Black women, right? We all love different things. We present ourselves in different ways. We engage with other people in different ways. There's a real diversity and beauty in that diversity. But to hear that to and from, it offers an invitation for us to unite in some way and just kind of give a nod, like I'm thinking of you and you mean something to me.
Yes. I think back on when I first applied to nursing school. I did very well in high school, so I wasn't concerned about my grade point average. So I applied to several schools throughout the country, but I never heard anything back from any of the colleges. So I went to see my high school advisor to see what the problem was. And when I went to visit her, I found all my applications still sitting on her desk, and she had never sent any out. So I didn't get into nursing school, obviously, that year. And my father took my applications and traveled around, and he found this very remote Catholic Catholic college in Lodi, New Jersey. And when I went, it was a home of Felician nuns, and they advised me that we never accepted Negroes into this school, so you would be our first case. So I went in as a nursing student, being the first case Black nursing student, and you can imagine what the spotlight felt like on me. And that feeling stayed with me throughout all my education. So finding a place once I graduated from school, I came to California, and I found the Bay Area Black Nurses Association, and it felt like Sherella says in her dissertation, it felt like home. It was a place that I didn't have to validate who I was. It was a place where I could just be me, and I knew that the women that surrounded me supported me and loved me, and it was a great feeling. And that's something I want to continue on, because I see that the students today need that same kind of support. So when you see to and talk about to and from, that's what we need to give to our students and the young women who are coming behind us. They need that encouragement and support that we received all our lives, because it's very lonely out there, and being a single Black woman in a sea of people who don't necessarily look like you or think like you. So I see that to and from connection that way.
When I hear to and from, I kind of think of to and from the different generations that I am a part of in my family. So I think of my ancestral line. For like the last 2 years, I have been like heavily focused on like healing the generational wounds, especially the ones that kind of travel through my maternal line. So when I hear to and from, and I relate that to wellness and Black women in healthcare, it actually directly affects like my mother and my grandmother. And one thing that I've been really stressing for like the last 2 years of my life is rest. I think a lot of times we don't put enough emphasis on the luxury that comes with sustained rest. I've witnessed many women in my family experience stress and manifestations of physical ailments from the stress or not giving their bodies rest, to the point where I had to change like the movements and the care that I was giving myself at such a young age, but knowing that 20 years down the line I'll be my mother, and then 20 more years from that I'll be my grandmother. And in doing that, I've actually been encouraging the women in my family, going back 2 generations, and my niece, who's a generation under me, to sleep. Like, it's something as simple as that. Like, that is needed. Give your body rest, listen to your body. When everything else falls away, you won't be able to just order a new body, you know? So for me, when I think of self-care and wellness amongst Black women, I think directly in my ancestral line, and how that looks as far as sustained rest and how that can be promoted within my own direct community. And hopefully that dominoes out to greater communities.
Okay. And then for me, when I hear the to and from, it has very much, the past couple of years have been huge transition in my life. It seems like there's been one change after another after another. Um, and so it's also been a period of reflection. And so when I hear this theme, it really reminds me of the different ways that I've been supported by all of the different circles, not just in this past couple of years, but when I even look back to when there's been difficult situations such as divorce. There was a set of sisters there who knew me before I had been in that relationship. So it was the work of remembering who I had been, how to heal and get back to myself. And then with all of the transitions the past couple of years, with suddenly being thrown into being a caregiver for two 81-year-old twins, the pandemic, and in the midst of all of that, being a mental health care provider. So as a care professional, constantly pouring of myself into other people, it was great to have a circle of people who were saying, you know what, you're okay. And giving that back to me and making me focus on myself. Um, One of the biggest things that's come out of it, just as Jasmine was saying, the importance of rest. What I've tried to do throughout all of this, with all of these changes, is to really make sure, if it's just 5 minutes a day that I have to sit down by myself and not talk to anybody, not do anything. Sometimes it's sitting in silence at night after I've put everybody to bed. But that is my time for me, just to kind of decompress and have for myself. The other thing has just been the importance of focusing on connectedness with others. This has been very isolative process with the pandemic, and also kind of the shelter in place. And so at times feeling very lonely. And so having like various group me chats going with friends, talking about a variety of topics, having Zoom meetings to take the place of when we would have been able to hang out in person. And even sometimes where I would just sit there and not even engage in the conversation, but just to be there and be in the midst of something going on, was a way that I preserved and maintained myself, so that I can continue to do good work and be of service to others. And so those are the things that come to mind when I hear that theme.
Thank you for sharing your reflections. Y'all have already lifted the key roles in regards to motherhood, sisterhood, your professional roles. I'm curious, if we think a little bit more about the pandemic, if we can extend that conversation, how has these key roles, your personal, community, and professional role, impacted the way you've navigated wellness, healing, and care for yourself?
Well, I will
I'll
go
go.
first, especially being in what they call the invisible front line, with mental health. It was something, it's kind of, I subconsciously ended up thinking, really being more positive in my interactions with the clients that I worked with. Um, because we were kind of in uncharted waters. We had a situation where it's kind of trying to counsel someone on whether or not to go to a funeral. And this is before everything got shut down, because of their fears of being exposed. And so it really became this reality of, how do you counsel somebody on grief and loss when they're not having the opportunity to kind of do some of the in-person things that are part of that process. And so really being more mindful of interactions with people who have all of a sudden become virtual, either by video or telephone. How do I kind of continue to provide a good experience and really kind of giving this encouragement, positivity? But what came out of it is really realizing that I needed to take a deeper dig into my own mental health. And so was able to seek out some services and actually find out that I had ADHD that I did not know about. Um, because you have time to sit and think and look at patterns and reflect. And so that was something that I think never would have come out of this, is really being able to take that look at myself and figure out, well, what are some roadblocks? And so being able to get that, take that first step, which is very weird as being a mental health professional, to say, I need to go and see about this. And the process of taking medications. Although I prescribe medications on a daily basis, I try not to take medicines if I don't have to. And so really kind of getting over that roadblock, saying, you know what, if it's good enough for the people that I serve and I'm doing this on a daily basis, I need to maybe take some care and do that for myself. But then again, just really being mindful of my tendency to say yes, 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 and realizing that it's okay for me to say no, and I don't feel bad about it. Having a group of friends that there was a lot of guilt that I had. My mother had a stroke. And so to be a healthcare professional, and you can help all of these other people, but the people in your family, I couldn't help her. Despite my counseling her on eating properly, doing what she needed to do for her blood sugar, I mean, for her diabetes, for her high blood pressure, here it is, she had a stroke. And when she had the stroke, because I was living here at her home, she mentioned having some numbness in the bottom of her leg. And she asked me to come look at it. She has a history of having like Charlie horse's cramps, and she had fallen asleep on the couch. So we come up with all these rationales for what it might be. But I said, you know, it could be the beginning of a stroke. Maybe you should go to the emergency room and have it checked out. And she said, oh, no, don't say that. And she went to warm up a bag of microwave pork skins. And I sat there in my room grappling, did I want to have that fight to have her go? But I said, if you don't feel better in about an hour, come and let me know. And she didn't. Woke up that morning, there it is. And so there was a lot of guilt that I had. And so it was really just reflecting on having the experience of sisters supporting me to say, you know what, you can't feel guilty for that. You can't beat yourself up, and really just learning how to have some self-compassion, I think, is one of the things that's come up for me during the pandemic. And I'll stop.
I believe, Jasmine, you wanted to go.
I'll go. The pandemic was a blessing in disguise for myself and those directly related to me. I think that it gave space and time to really sit with ourselves in a way that I have not been able to before. I think that oftentimes, like, we find ourselves on hamster wheels where we're going and going and going. And in that way, we get very distracted with the routine of life or the way that we need to show up for our obligations. But when you really get an opportunity to sit with yourself and ask yourself tough questions and to really think through how you actually exist in the world, and not in a way that's like, okay, I work for blah, blah, blah. I do blah, blah, blah on this weekend. It's like, who are you as a human, as in your core, right? And so I think that with the pandemic, I kind of have let go of my attachment or identifying myself so much in my role, more so trying to show up in a very present way. So, and I want to make sure I'm explaining this correctly, but basically, I'm a mother, right? But before I'm a mother, I'm Jasmine. And so what is the essence of Jasmine, and how can I add that to my role, right? Instead of saying I'm a mother, so therefore I'm just going to feel that obligation and whatever it means to be a mother society-wise. It's like, oh no, I'm Jasmine. I'm having this human experience. How can I bring to whatever space I'm showing up in that experience without being obligated by a title or a label? And I think in doing that, it has been very liberating for me, because I've kind of let go a lot of that type A that I've had prior to, because I'm just here. because the one thing the pandemic definitely showed you is that life is short. Things can change quickly, and it's never going to be the same as it was yesterday. Therefore, be present, because that's really the only constant thing that you have. So I think when I read that question prior to getting ready for this podcast, I really had to sit there and be like, you know what? Like, I have my roles, but I'm not really my roles anymore. I'm myself, and I show up with whoever that is when I can, and I make sure it's always coming from a loving space. But you're gonna get what you get that day, and so in that transparency, I've also had to be very humble, because sometimes that way that I show up, it's always in the best way, but because I'm being my authentic self, I don't feel guilty. I just understand that, okay, let's evaluate this. How could you have been better? Is there a way you could have been better? What conversation can you have with whoever I'm being to in relation to whoever, whether it's my mom, my son, or my coworkers, what have you. And I think that has actually really, really made the past year probably the most fulfilling I've had so far.
This pandemic has brought up for me a validation of all of the things that I've been teaching over the years in community health about the health disparities in our communities. This COVID has absolutely highlighted every problem that we've experienced in the Black community. And so I can use this as an example of saying, yes, this is what we've been talking about all of these years, that these are groups of people who have been ignored by this society. And it has given me validation for all the things that I've been talking about over the years. The other thing that's been helpful for me on a personal level, it's given me time to recenter and to, I use a affirmation every morning that the light of God within me shines brighter every day. And I use that to reaffirm that, yes, this whole COVID-19 has brought about a vast change in this society, but we need to stay centered in who we are and what we believe in. And so the health of our communities, I think it's even more vitally important than it ever was before. So it's given me a better centering of what's going on in this society and a validation of the work that I'm doing.
Agreed. I can echo everything that has been said already and add COVID actually kind of made my two career professions collide in a way that I run a digital education company, and we've been talking about being in the digital age for a while now, but we weren't fully living in that digital age, right? We weren't engrossed in it in a way that we had to be last year. Like almost everything that we needed to do to communicate with one another required some use of technology. And then on the flip side, I'm also a religion instructor. So understanding the importance of ritual and how ritual really plays a role in us being able to live fulfilled lives, right? Have these routines that we go through. And when technology sort of took over our routine last year, for a lot of people, it was really uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable to jump from meeting to meeting on Zoom or whatever service provider you were using. It was uncomfortable to have back-to-back phone calls. It was uncomfortable to go pick up your groceries and stay inside your car instead of being able to walk up and down the aisles and go through the movements and interact with the people who were around you. Simply being able to not hug your loved ones, right? Being unable to embrace people who you love and care about was a really difficult thing. We buried several family members last year. So I understand the mental health professionals need to express, how do we say goodbye without being able to say goodbye? How do we embrace this change that we necessarily did not desire, but we also cannot reject? It is what it is. And so last year was an opportunity for us to learn what it means to adapt, but also what it means to prioritize, much to Jasmine's point, to prioritize the things that matter most and to hold tight to them. and really understand that it is a part of our humanity, but it's also a part of what makes the world beautiful. And as much tragedy as we see, we also see all of these little things that we kind of had to negotiate with last year that we finally get an opportunity to take advantage of once again. And so it becomes a question of what's your mindset, right? Are you going to take advantage of these opportunities that you have that you didn't have last year? Are you going to hug the people that you love? Are you going to tell them that you love them? Are you going to try to spend time? But also, much to Esker-D's point, that you want to also set boundaries so that you don't feel your energy at a deficit because you're trying to take advantage of all of the things you missed out last year. So it's a delicate balance, and I really had to kind of hone in on my expectation of what I wanted life to be going forward, because you do lose these loved ones, you lose opportunities to see people and celebrate moments. Like I had a friend who graduated, she finally got her PhD, and it was like just watching a picture of her instead of being able to see her be hooded and walk across the stage. And I'm like, man, she spent 6 years going after this degree, and for it to be kind of reduced into a 3-second video
Yeah.
was tragic for me. Like I was more hurt and upset about it than she was. She was like, you know what, it is what it is. I move forward. And I'm like, what does it mean to move forward? Going back to that to and from, it is a transitional period that we're in, and life is constantly transitioning, and it's our choice to decide how we embrace that transition.
Mhm. Beautiful.
Definitely. Even going on, speaking of transitioning, this transitioning period this past year and last year, and just for us to sit and reflect about ourselves and our own identities, what are some of the activities or hobbies you guys like to do to help with wellness, healing, and care?
I'll start. I love music. Music is kind of like my dramatic pause for everything. You know, it inserts the words or the emotion or even the visual that you need sometimes when you need it. Like yesterday, I was trying to get some work done, and then I started listening to a song that says I went to church in a Chevy, and it's a country music song. I'm gonna tell on myself right now, but it's a country music song. I lived for 10 years in Tennessee, so I got a little bit of extra country in me that's outside of Mississippi. But just that in the song, he talks about being in his car and just driving. And he didn't have any destination, but he knew he needed to get in the car and just have a moment with himself. The Bible talks about coming to yourself, right? In this moment where you come back into your body, into your understanding, and into being one with yourself and with the spirit. Like that is just a beautiful moment that I love to take advantage of through music.
Mhm. I like walking every morning. That's my centering space. I take a 1 mile walk every morning, at least 1 mile. As longer the better. And then I come back and read scripture, and it seems to center me. And I think I need that every morning to get started, along with my coffee. But it's my way of bringing myself back into my body and preparing myself for the day ahead. But I think we need some sort of meditative experience to remind ourselves why we're present here and what our purpose in life is. So it's a great centering for me to just walk and enjoy nature as I walk along the beach.
I recently, well, not recently, for like about a year now, I started working out. I used to hate the gym. I love to be outside. I was a big walker too, Dr. Marcia. I love walking, but I also noticed that if it was poor weather, I would not work out. And so I'm like, okay, we have to figure this out. And so I joined the gym. So I've been working out for about a year. I also changed my diet, so I no longer eat meat. I do the Daniel fast every, I would say, seasonally. So I might do it like every spring, summer, fall, what have you, just to reset my body. A lot of meditation as well. I have a space in my home where I have like a lot of my plants set up, and I'll sit with them and just reflect and talk with myself, talk with God, and that has been super grounding as well. As well as I journal a lot now. I used to do that so much when I was a little girl, but I've returned to that maybe April of last year. I have a journal personal for myself. I share a journal with 4 other women. And then I have a journal that I write in and that I kind of do in parallel with another friend. So I have like about 3 or 4 journals going on right now. So quite a few things in motion to keep, myself centered, but a few things.
Let's see. So for me, I've gone through various renditions of health practices, just depending on time. Initially, it would be what I call fake yoga, which would be kind of sitting and doing some stretching and breathing exercises. So it wasn't real yoga poses all the time. That's why it's kind of fake yoga, but in spirit it was. I was into going to the gym, which I couldn't do. So I have some type of fitness equipment at home, which I have to be consistent about using. And so at least it's here. So when the mood hits me, I can jump up and do some type of activity. But one of the biggest things has been, because I've never been a person who really had hobbies, and I realized, well, what is it that I like to do? So one of the things as kind of is really into music. Before the pandemic, I did not have an Instagram account, but everyone was talking about Club Quarantine with D Nice. And so that became something really that kept me going a lot. When I would get together with my friends on Zoom, we would sit there and listen to DJ sets and kind of we're dancing around at home because you can't go outside and dance anywhere. But hey, I had space right here. So that was one thing that really listening to music that kept me going. And then the opportunity to never miss a Sunday at church because it's virtual. So I'm at church every Sunday in the first row, which really kind of helps to keep me grounded, keep me going, and keep me empowered as I'm navigating through all that's going on. So.
Thank y'all so much for sharing. Esker-D, you mentioned having Zoom spaces where you are with your sister circles. And Jasmine, you also mentioned sharing a journal with some of your sister circles. So I'm wondering if y'all can elaborate a little bit more on how does your sister circle help you in regards to managing that healing, wellness, and care?
Sure, I'll speak on my journal. So I have one journal that is my intimacy journal. I experienced a breakup in 2020, so right when the pandemic began. And one of my friends confided into me that she had an intimacy journal. And, she explained to me and showed me some of the pages of her writing. I was like, oh, this is such a great idea. So I started my intimacy journal because I was never one to be very expressive about my emotions. I can be very rational and like kind of rationalize how I'm feeling, but typically when I'm in something, I'm not very good at coping with whatever those feelings are. So the journaling, which is kind of how I've gotten into the communications field, is because I'm really big into words and writing and all of that. The journaling allowed me to kind of go a little bit deeper into what I was experiencing and what I was feeling. But out of that, having it for for the past 2 years, there were a lot of themes that I started to see come up. And it's like, oh, okay, let's write about this. Okay, you're feeling this. And so what we would do is on Sundays, we would come together and we would call it like Super Soul Sundays. And we would come together and do whatever we want. Fake yoga, which there's no such thing as fake yoga, by the way. If you're stretching, you're doing yoga. If it's intentional, it's yoga. So we would do yoga and then talk about whatever we wrote. And we would find that we would usually be in very much parallel in whatever we were feeling. Even though it was like separate experiences, it was the same theme. So a lot of things came out of that journal. A lot of things I've been able to talk to my mom about, and kind of that's what led to that whole generational healing that I was speaking about. And then, in addition to that, I have a journal that I share with 3 other women. We were bridesmaids to one of my close friends, and we were two separate friend groups that she had. She had two friends that she had from grade school, and then she had two friends that I'm a part of that she developed when she was an adult, and we all just really got along very well. And so she's a therapist. So as therapists do, she's like, guys, I really want to start like a sisterhood of the traveling journal, and we obliged. But that has been very helpful too, because one thing that I really had to heal in myself is my relationship with women and being able to be vulnerable with other women. And so it was a major challenge for me to be very vulnerable with these women that, while I enjoyed the bridal experience with, they weren't someone, or they weren't people that I was already close with or already built that trust. So having to really sit down and like figure out how to build trust with a person that I'm not really obligated to do that with, that was just a challenge. In that, just despite whatever I was writing, just doing that was a challenge. And we all came to find out like we had very similar attachment styles, and everyone would get really anxious when we had like our FaceTime calls to like talk about the rotation and what we read. And so just seeing how that played out has really showed me my growth since the height of the pandemic to now. Like, wow, you've really been opening up. You really are changing. So those two journals have been like really instrumental in kind of like my vulnerability that I'm able to have today, because I did not have it 2 years ago at all. I was a very emotionally unavailable person, and now I'm proud to say that I'm a lot more emotionally available than I was presently. Than I was previously. So.
Okay. And so for me, I was sitting here trying to think of the different sets of friends and circles that I have. So there's a group me chat. And so anybody that we have a group me chat with, sometimes we organize Zoom meetings. And so there's one that's called Ladies Unplugged. That came about at one of my friends' weddings, where she was kind of she was like the person in common. Friends from high school, from college, from her childhood. And we had such a good time at the wedding. We said it would really be nice for us to all get together kind of on a regular basis. And so we started taking an annual girls trip, which we call Ladies Unplugged, where you shut down your electronics. So we're unplugged from everything. People are in their roles as wives, mothers, etc. It's our time to just be with one another and be present. So that's one group where we kind of have different chats that's ongoing on a daily basis, but then we would periodically have Zoom meetings because we couldn't go on our annual trip to Jamaica that year. And so we were really looking at, well, what can we do? It ended up taking like a weekend retreat, where the funny thing was, where we're usually in the pool, laughing, talking, having drinks and things of that sort. We mostly sat around on the sofa watching movies and taking naps on and off. I think we left the house one time because everybody just needed that rest and regeneration, was just happy to be in each other's presence. I have a second group, which we call ourselves the Tribe. With the Tribe, we started off doing the group me meetings. I can't even remember the other app that came about where you can kind of talk to friends, because we couldn't have enough people on there, so we let it go. But we started having weekly, like a prayer call or a prayer meeting once a week. So everybody would do a check-in, and then we would close out with prayer on a weekly basis at the beginning of the pandemic as a way to support one another. But then more informally, I have a group of friends that I grew up with in childhood. And so we get together from time to time, or either just have phone conversations and chats. I have my group of friends from college that we would get together. We were getting together quarterly before the pandemic to have dinner and things of that sort. So we started trying to figure out, well, how do we maintain and preserve that? And so really looking at ways, like, we wanted to have a sense of normalcy in a situation where things were very abnormal. And so those have been things that have really helped to sustain me, and kind of for us to sustain one another throughout all of this process. Um, and so it was just kind of the transition, as Sierra was saying, kind of all of a sudden everything is on technology. And so how do we use that to kind of still maintain the connections that we had before?
Okay. So what conversations are you guys not having with your sister circle groups that you need to have, and what's preventing this conversation?
So this is a timely question for me because I am currently in a situation where I'm trying to figure out how to have a conversation with a few of the women that I have developed new friendships with. I think what I found with my newly exercised vulnerability, I'm now in a space where I no longer want to accept people who I feel are being stingy with their feelings. And I'm trying to do it in a way that is compassionate because I want to remember where I came from, so to say. And so I've been really struggling with how to communicate that in a loving way that's not criticizing the women, but also kind of encouraging to open up a bit more. I think because I've been on the journey that I've been on, it's not fair to just assume everyone else can just jump on the train and be there. However, I am in a space where those are the only type of friendships that I want. So it really is a fine line between, okay, I can express my boundaries in a compassionate way, but also, is it okay for you to say, you know what, this does not serve where I am now? And so I think what's preventing me from having that conversation is that I can be a very straightforward person. And so having to remember to say things in a not a delicate way in where you're trying to sweeten it up, but say things in a way that's coming from a heart place, like a heart space, rather than that's coming from like logically this is not fitting with what I believe it should be. Which is something that I've also had to learn as well. So just really learning how to communicate that message to the women that I need to communicate that to in a way that can be received for the audience that I'm trying to send that message to.
Jasmine, if I can address that, I think that if you respond to a person from a heart place, they will feel your sincerity, and I think you'll get your point across. Um, and it won't be perceived as being judgmental. That's just my thought on that.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. That's one thing that I can really be very cognizant of. I hate coming off as judgmental, so I always try to come from a place that's being as objective as possible, with also like trying to like not dismiss my own personal experience and my feelings, just because I do try to always like consider all parties, all thought processes and everything. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I can kind of hit on part of what Jasmine said about the types of relationships that you're establishing or even continuing with people. Everybody approaches different phases on their journey, right? So I think our friend group or some sister circles that I'm a part of, we're kind of sort of redefining and recategorizing the roles that we play in each other's lives. And I think that's a healthy thing because sometimes the friends that you had fun with become the friends that you now need to uh, consider job applications with. Like they become friends who you need to talk about investments with. And that transition doesn't always happen between friends. So finding friends that actually fit the phase that you're in life doesn't always mean that you have to get rid of the old ones, but sometimes, like I said, you recategorize the role that they play in your life and the role that you play in theirs. When I started my professional career, I was a therapist, and then I decided I didn't want to do full-time therapy, and I didn't realize how having that identity played a role in my relationships with other people. So I had several friends who considered me the friend therapist, right? The one that you get and you don't have to worry about billable hours as you talk to them because it's like this natural unveiling and unfolding of advice and tenderness that kind of comes out in conversation with them. And so as I pushed against the identity of becoming a therapist full time, I kind of realized that those friendships had a strain on them. So it became my agenda to kind of figure out, well, in what way can I become a better friend to you? Because this isn't the kind of friend I want to be to you anymore. So how can our friendship change so that you feel heard, you feel seen, but I also don't feel exhausted after talking to you for 30 minutes because you've unpacked your entire life in that 30 minutes. So now we're definitely in a better place where they realize, like, you're not my therapist. I'm like, I am not, but I can refer you to somebody who can be, or they have their own now. And so it's great. But I think, to Jasmine's point, sometimes we have the expectation that people are going to recognize and accept the change that we feel within ourselves. And sometimes they need a little hand holding, right? To understand and accept that your identity has changed, but your love for them hasn't changed, right? Your kindness towards them hasn't changed, although some of your interactions might.
Let's see. For me, conversations that I'm not having, we talk about all kinds of things. But I'd say one of the things in general that I hear women saying that the conversations they're not having and they're looking for more information. People have a tendency to feel uncomfortable talking about sexual health as something, or kind of changes that happen as we age, kind of what to expect about our bodies. Um, and people act like it's something like, they just have to deal with it. Well, no, like I've had different experiences. We share these experiences one another. I need to let you know what to expect when that happens. So you're not feeling kind of awkward about it. And then something that I'm always trying to push and promote, just because of my professional work, but it's one of the reasons that I got into this line of work, is really having open conversations about mental health issues. Um, whether it's, just with being stressed, being able to kind of communicate that and let people know when you need to be supported. Um, really kind of, instead of just isolating, telling people, I'm overwhelmed right now. So just as you all are saying, it's kind of defining boundaries, letting people know that it's not them, but you really just need that moment to yourself. Um, and if there are larger issues going on, kind of really not being afraid to talk about that. Um, I can think of one incident where it happened to be a friend's family member, um, ended up being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so really kind of getting to the point where they didn't feel like it was something shameful to talk about. And so these are the type of conversations that, I mean, if people had them on a regular basis, I think that process is a whole lot easier for people to access the services and the care that they need, and kind of to get along the process of healing and maintaining their sense of wellness.
Mhm. I think one of the conversations that I think Esker-D highlighted or talked about is the issue that we have when we're tired. When Black women are tired, that we get so much on our plates that we don't stop and say, as Fannie Lou Hamer used to say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And we need to acknowledge that about each other, that there's something called role overload, and that we take on more roles and we don't let go of any of them. We think as Black women, we have to continue to endure and take on these roles. And I think the conversation we need to have that we're not having is to stop and say, I'm tired and I need some replenishment and I need some refreshment and I have to take a minute and let's just rest. Let's just stop doing everything and just acknowledge that we need to restore ourselves and rejuvenate ourselves. That's the conversation I think we need to put in all the midst of the things that we're doing.
If I can interject, I love that you said that, Dr. Canton, because Esker-D was talking about being diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
And we often personify Black women as being the angry Black woman, right? But irritability can be one of the main character traits that
Yeah.
you develop as you get into that phase of exhaustion, right? Or you have these ways of maneuvering the world that the world isn't accommodating, right? You
Right.
don't get the accommodations you need when you have high energy or you have low energy. and you need your schedule to fluctuate day to day based off of that. So this idea, going back to what Jasmine said about rest, right? Not even rest as in I need to go to bed, but I just need to unplug. I
Right.
need to sit and be by myself. I need to enjoy just being in solitude and figure out what I need in this moment to get to the next moment.
We would like to thank McKissick Health and Wellness for sponsoring the Lirae Journey podcast. Are you frustrated with where your life is heading? Do you want to change your routine and don't know where to start? We know a company that will help you to build a routine to create the lifestyle you want. McKissick Health and Wellness is a digital education company that specializes in providing adults with resources to develop habits that last and live healthier lives. Through programming, a magazine, and social campaigns, McKissick Health teaches you how to use your creativity, sense of innovation, and problem solving skills to foster better relationships, lifestyle practices, and achieve your goals one choice at a time. Learn more about their health and lifestyle brands and social outreach when you visit McKissickHealth.com. That's McKissick Health.com. Or follow them on social media at McKissick Health. So thank you again, McKissick Health and Wellness, for sponsoring this podcast. Now back to the conversation.
So thank you, sisters and supporters, for tuning in to the Lirae Journey podcast. We're back with part 2 of the conversation with Dr. Canton, Esker-D, Sierra, and Jasmine, as we have a conversation about Black women on wellness, healing, and care with a focus on intergenerational and community perspectives. Jasmine talked a little bit about the importance of intergenerational healing, and Esker-D talked about the importance of recognizing your role changing over time, especially when we consider family care. For our first question, we would like to know, is there anything that you would like to tell older Black women on this topic, and what would it be and why?
So as you mentioned, I already talked about like my whole big thing is rest. And so I was just listening to all of you ladies, but I want to add to that. I don't want rest to be something that we do when we're tired. I want rest to be something we do all the time. So for instance, the reason why I started resting is because I started to notice like that I would get cold. The moment that I was working too much, I would get sick. And I'm like, oh, I get sick every time I'm not sleeping. And so what I started to do is like, okay, I'm going to train myself to sleep. And my family would make fun of me. They would tear me down, like, you're gonna sleep. What? It's Sunday at noon. I'm like, no, I'm going to practice sleep because I don't want to get sick. And so every Sunday I would schedule sleep. My family was like, oh, we're having Sunday. No, I'm sleep. I will see you guys after my nap is over. So now when people have conversations with me about sleep, they're like, oh, I don't know how you take naps. I don't know how you do. I trained myself to it. And I think people think when I say that I'm being funny, but I actually physically trained myself to rest. And the reason I did that is because I didn't want to keep resting every time I got sick. I didn't want to keep saying I'm tired. I don't deserve to be tired. None of you deserve to be tired. Yes, we have our roles. Yes, we want to be super women. However, I can be fully Jasmine and fully productive and rest at the same time. And so our bodies are super active when we're resting. So you're still working, you're still moving. So for me, like I tell my mom all the time, I didn't speak about this earlier when we were talking about like the pandemic, but my mom was actually hospitalized during the pandemic and we couldn't see her for 2 to 3 weeks. And she is dealing with an autoimmune disease, but on top of that, she does not rest when she's supposed to. And I got so angry and resentful with her because it's like, in my mind, I'm like, you're going to take yourself away from us, all because you're hustling for what? What are you hustling for? And so it's like a constant fight between my mom, who is older than me, and to say to her, like, Mom, you are more important than anything. And so I just won a small battle. She is moving to part-time in her current job. And I'm so excited for her. But I even like found myself getting a little bit resentful again because she's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be part-time so I can help you all more with the kids. And I'm like, Mommy, you are not moving to part-time to help with the kids. You are moving to part-time so you can have time to just rest. And so that is what I would say to like older Black women. It's like, I'm so grateful for my mom, because if she didn't hustle the way she did as a single mom, I probably wouldn't be in the position that I'm in. But in that same token, you deserve to rest even when you're not tired. It is needed. It is necessary. It is just as equally as important as work or love or care or the various other ways we show up in the world. So that is something I would definitely say.
So I will just kind of piggyback on that, is along that theme is we don't have to be like long suffering. It's just kind of people just kind of take on these roles, and like they just, it's like a badge. We're taught that you can do everything. You have to be better than, you have to be 10 times better than the next person to get ahead. And so there's this expectation that is put on ourselves that we are like, we can do everything and anything, and we just have to endure and keep going. And in the midst of that, people are breaking themselves down. Um, and so I'd say the one thing, and I'm trying to think the best way to word it, is it's okay to care for people, but you do not have to take care of people. So you have people, say, with adult children thinking, oh, I have to go do this for them. No, you don't have to do it. You can care about their situation. You can figure out ways that you can assist to the extent possible, but you do not have to take on their responsibility to make sure something doesn't happen for them. Also, that things that your children do are not necessarily a reflection of you, and how successful you were as a parent. This is a theme that comes up at times, and it's funny. I realized it just in a conversation with my mother, helping her clean out of her room and reflecting on all of the different educational books that we had. Like there were books on writing composition and things of that sort. And I just made a comment that, wow, if I didn't have it together to be able to do this in school, it would be a shame, because look at all these books that I had access to. And then her response was, well, I was trying to be a good mother. So in her mind, and it was weird, it was kind of an aha moment that kind of, she would always push me, push me, push me. Tell me, oh, you can do better. But it seemed like that was attached to her, to how well she was doing as a parent. And so things of that nature is not a reflection on you if your children do not do certain things, if they grow up and they stray away from what you've taught them. So for people to hold that sometimes, and I see that a lot in practice, where people come in and they're upset, they're depressed, they're worn out because of things that their children are doing. And so we cannot control others' behaviors. Um, and so it's really just for older women to kind of have that mindset that it's okay to let go of things and focus on yourself, to prevent that burnout. I think it's one of the most important things to let people know.
One of the things that I'm looking at as I get older is that there are some women who came before me who are still here, um, that we need to talk to, we need to interview, and we need to ask them how they survived. I think there are lessons to be learned from seniors on how Black women made it through, because I know we're all standing on very strong shoulders, that there were people who came before us who made it possible for where we are today. So that's what I'm looking to do. I see some women in the sister circles that I have who are in their 80s and have stories to tell, and I would like to find a way to capture their stories so that we have a history of ways and means in which we can survive in this country. I think that would be very helpful for us.
Definitely. Is there anything that you could tell Black girls about wellness and healing? Um, Anything that you want to share and tell them about this topic?
I'll start on that one. And I think my point is to both the elders and to younger women. I hope that we can embrace the ideology that we're never just one thing, right? That we are many things that exist all at the same time. So I don't have to limit who I am or how I show up in this world based off of an identity I was given or one that I took on my own. I can do right now. We have this phrase, multi-hyphenate, which implies that you are great or good at many things and you enjoy doing many things. And I think there's beauty in that. It also hints to creation, right? And our ability to create. Not only women as creating beings with our bodies, but our ability to create with our mind, with our spirit, just with our energy. Our energy alone can change a room and the atmosphere in that room and the hearts in that room. So enjoying the idea and embracing the idea that I can be many things and enjoy all of those things to the fullest ability that I have.
And I'd say my advice or recommendation to Black girls is simply to accept yourself, love yourself, and not feel that you have to have others validate who you are. Um, I think a lot of times that just creates to chaos within one's being. It's trying to be something that other people expect you to be. And you see people going off making bad decisions, taking taking risks that they shouldn't necessarily risk, putting undue pressure on themselves, thinking that they have to kind of be accomplished at a certain point in life. And it makes me giggle at times when people come in and they're like 21 and their biggest thing is, I'm worried about my future. I don't know what I'm going to do, and I should be doing this. And I'm thinking, you're not supposed to have it figured out at 21. So really just allowing yourself to live and experience things at your own rate, and dictate your own course instead of saying, well, this person has this, and so I should be doing this, and I'm behind because I'm not there yet. That's not your journey. That's not your path. And so to really just be okay with yourself and where you're at and what you're doing. Um, and that is one of the biggest things that I can say, kind of to preserve yourself when you're young, is to get into the habit of doing that. And to realize that just one other thing is that you may evolve over time. So the person you think you want to be right now and what makes sense right now may not make sense to you 1 month down the line. It might not make sense to you 10 years later. So it is okay to get to a point where you can recreate yourself, and it's okay to not know what direction you want to go in, and take some time to figure that out.
And I would add to that, Esker-D, that I would tell young women that you are not alone. You are not alone in this journey. And we often feel as though we're by ourselves in our circumstances, in school or our journey or wherever we're going, that we're doing this on our own, and we're not. That there are other women and there are other people who are on that same journey with you. And to find people you can join with, and you can become allies in working things through together. Don't think you have to do this on your own, because you don't. That there are other people who look like you, who are thinking like you, who are on the same trajectory, and you could join forces with them, and there's strength in numbers. I would encourage that. I see that all the time with my students who think they're going through this journey by themselves, and they're not.
I would say, I'm trying to think of my niece because that's what I think about when I think of Black girls. I just look at my niece and I think of her. She's 11. And I would say take up space. And I would say take up as much space as you need. And whether it's physical, whether it's mentally, whether it's emotionally, just take up space and don't ever apologize for it. I think that a lot of times as Black women, we do hear the trope of like the angry Black woman, or, you know, the strong Black woman, or whatever comes with that. And I think like it does not matter if someone labels you an angry Black woman, a strong Black woman, a weak Black woman, or whatever. You just take up that space. And you be confident in whatever space that is. And if you can sleep at night with that space, then I'm supporting you and I'm rocking with you. And I think that there was this older Black woman, and it was like maybe 7-8 years ago, and she asked me a question. She was like, what's the rush? Like, what is the rush? What are you rushing to? Where are you rushing to? And I think that's what I would probably ask young Black women a lot of times too. I think that it is okay to think you have your whole life planned out at 19. It is okay to think you have your whole life planned out at 21. It's okay to think you have your whole life planned out at 65. Be kind to whoever you are, to yourself at that moment, because the whole point of life is just to be here and experience it. So you have to always be kind to yourself at whatever space you are at, whatever phase you are at. You're going to be there, and you're going to believe wholeheartedly that's where you should be. And guess what? At that moment, that is exactly where you should be. And tomorrow, you'll be exactly where you should be then. So I think I would say take up space, and what's the rush? Just be present where you are right there.
Beautiful.
Thank you for your beautiful reflections, as Dr. Canton has stated. I'm curious, what would you share with others to consider on this topic? So we know that as Black women, we're often in conversation with Black men. What would you share to others on the conversation about healing, wellness, and care?
And I'm glad that you actually mentioned being in conversations with Black men, because just as well as I have my circle of sister friends, I do have a handful of close male friends um, that have supported me throughout different phases of my life. And so it's funny, I have like friends from childhood, I have a couple of friends that I've made during adulthood, some that I lost contact with and kind of reconnected with through social media, things of that sort. But it's a different type of support you get from them at times, depending on the issues that you're dealing with. And so, if you've had negative experiences in relationships and things of that sort, it's good to have that neutral male person in your life to kind of tell you that, you know what, this person treated you this way. No, sis, you don't deserve that. You're actually okay. So to have that different type of energy, that different level of support from your male counterparts, but then also to be able to influence their conversations with their daughters, with their mothers, with their wives, etc. To be able to give them some insight into, you know, you're complaining that she's acting a certain way. This is what she might be dealing with, because me, these are some of the things I experienced. So kind of give her a little bit of grace and to kind of help them to be able to navigate. There are men out here who are single parents. And so really kind of being able to be a resource to them for how they can be more supportive and empowering of their daughters, I think is something important for other people to know about.
I love the question about speaking to Black men. I'm trying to learn to talk less and listen more. I think a lot of times Black men feel unheard. I think that's the struggle that we all experience as Black people, especially in America. But I think most specifically, Black men really feel unheard. And so, as even just raising a Black man myself, my son's 13, I really try to create a space where they can just where my son can just speak, where whoever I am in relation to, I have a lot of male friends as well. Thankfully, they have been a lot of support in my life as well. Just allowing them that space to just share and emote and to express. I don't think they get that to do that very often. Even like today, my dad's kind of going through something, and my father's very much the silent, strong Black male type military dad. So he's very much what you think of when you hear that. And so instead of like talking to him about it, it's just kind of like, hey, Dad, I'm taking you to breakfast today. And, you know, just letting him sit there. And when he's ready to speak, just listening and just like let him share with me, but trying to do it in a way that's not like pushing and urging him, trying to do it in a way that's like gentle and just allowing to receive whatever it is that he is ready to share. And I've kind of been trying to really show up in a lot of my male friendships and male relationships in that way, is like talk less. They hear people talking to them all the time. I'm raising my son, I talk to him all the time. So it's like when I do get a chance to listen to him, just trying to like listen a lot more than I am just speaking at him. So yeah.
Mhm. I like to encourage Black men to watch the video, The 19th Amendment. It's so powerful when it talks about how we were as slaves and how we moved along. And once slavery was abolished, they found another way to incarcerate Black men. And it's very, very powerful. And I think it gives them a historical perspective of some of the things they're experiencing today. And I think it's important that they understand this context. It's not them, that it's that we're a product of a society that we live in that has kept us oppressed. And I think they need to understand that, not from me saying it, but from them to see videos and other things that give information like this so that they can validate their own feelings and experiences.
I completely agree. I'm one of five girls, so I didn't have any brothers growing up. So I made friends with guys fast because I was like, "You play ball, I want to play ball. Let's play ball together." And my sisters weren't that type. I had one sister who played basketball, but she wasn't very friendly, and she knows that. I told her. I'm the youngest as well, so I have my own perception of that. But now I have four nephews, and so I'm learning the transition between talking, again, that word transition, the differences between talking to young girls and talking to young men, and or young women and talking to young men. It's so interesting, how choices differ, right? Sometimes we condition women, most of the time society often conditions women to make choices based off of how it affects the collective. But with young men, we don't always teach them that way. And so I'm watching my nephews transition between the mindset of making choices that benefit them, that solely benefit them, and making choices that also take into consideration the collective. One of my sisters is pregnant with my soon to be nephew. And so my other nephews were like watching her pack up all the things for them to leave from visiting us. And I said, okay, guys, there's one bag for everybody. So everybody grab a bag until they disappear. And it flipped in their heads. You could like watch their eyes light up as they realize, like, oh, I was just carrying my bag and that's not okay. No, because after you carry one bag, there'll still be four bags left. So, how do we embrace a society where we not only take care of ourselves, but we make sure that in taking care of ourselves, we have that self compassion and general compassion for other people and what they might need in order to take care of themselves? And so, in pastoral care and theology, we talk about the care of souls, and that being this mindset that we are physical beings, but we're also spiritual beings. And a lot of times that issue first arises in our spiritual life before it arises in our physical life. And so tapping into your own dualism, and then also recognizing that other people might have needs that differ from yours. And how can you not only attend to your needs, but attend to theirs as well? But also set those boundaries, right? That allow for you to be an individual and live an individual life and have all the things that you desire, but do that in community with other people.
Thank you all for sharing. And if you would like sisters to get in contact with you, please share your socials and where we can find you guys.
So, I have a page on Facebook. It's Esker-D Ligon, but for those, it's at Esker-D Ligon without the hyphen. That's also the same on Twitter, although I'm not very active there. I also have a website, eskerdligon.com, that does contain the hyphen. Here's what I forgot to mention earlier. At one point, I did self-publish a book, and so there's information about my book. And then for a while, I had a blog that I was maintaining, and so that's there on that website.
I can be reached at Dr. Canton at pacbell.net. So it's all lowercase, DRCANTON, at pacbell, PACBELL.net. And I also have a web page. It's cantonandassociates.com. And I also have a book on mentoring in higher education that I developed targeted for African American students going through school. So if anybody's interested in that. And I'm now working on the third edition of mentoring for all institutions. So please feel free to contact me on Facebook as well, Marcia Canton on Facebook. I look forward to hearing from you.
I am at I am Sierra Jacree on most social media platforms. Jacre is spelled Jecre. Shout out to my parents who got creative.
That's on Instagram, Sierra.
Yes, ma'am. It's
Thank you.
Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm even on Pinterest if you want to see my crazy recipe pins and little DIY projects around the house.
Okay.
I'm on social at J.Byrd, so it's JAYBYYRD. I also have a blog which needs much more attention than what I give it nowadays, but it is www.minihat-onefro.com, and that's where I share thoughts and life experiences.
Thank you all for sharing those. And as we wrap up our conversation, we would like to offer questions and practices for our listeners to consider. So, what reflection question would you like to pose to our listeners? And what's a source of inspiration that you would like to share?
I would ask for them to take a moment and determine what they need in order to be cared for, in order to feel cared for, but also in order to be cared for, to be provided for. I think as young adults, which I'm sure is part of your audience, but also people of all ages, we get in the groove of life without figuring out what it actually takes to do life. And I think those are two different things. For me, especially, like in order to do life, I need rest. Okay. I also need a cup of coffee. And I also need an environment that's conducive to me functioning, which means open spaces, but also a comfy couch. As you can see behind me, like I pretty much have to have a space that allows for me to exist, but also feed off of the energy of the natural things in the room without creating a space that has people in it to like energize me or things like that. So having like natural plants, we know plants are a big thing now, that a lot of people are embracing who are younger. A lot of younger people are embracing because they realize the natural benefits of having like lots of plants around. So figuring out the things that you need in order to be cared for, but also to feel cared for. And that's kind of in relationship with other people, in relationship with yourself, like going back to that self-compassion and self-understanding and just self-identity. Like, how do I identify myself and what do I need in order to be that person?
When I was going through the doctoral program, I felt that sense of loneliness that I talked about, being the first in the program as an African American woman. And what got me through was music, gospel music. So I would sit in my car before I went into class and I would just listen to motivational, inspirational songs. You're going to make it. God is with you. Anything that I could eat, I was like a dry sponge, just taking in all of these positive messages that I needed to move forward. So I would say to people, younger people, to find what inspires you, what motivates you, and use that as a way to move forward. And use something positive that negates all the negative things we've heard about ourselves, but use something that we know that there's something greater, someone greater and higher that we can aspire to. So use something to elevate your thoughts and your minds before you pursue any activity.
And I would say something for people to reflect on, um, is kind of what are things that you would like to do in your life and what are you afraid of and what's getting in your way, um, and really kind of focus on how do you negate that, because a lot of times that's what keeps people from taking the first step, um, and so to kind of live intentionally and live fearlessly to the extent possible to kind of create a sense of wellness and acceptance within yourself. And one of my sources of inspiration, as I did mention before, is really staying spiritually grounded. And so, just as Dr. Canton was saying, kind of with really listening to sometimes gospel music is what I need to do is have my own individual praise party and gospel concert. And I feel all right after the fact, or sometimes it's gangster rap and some other music. But whatever it is, the mood that I'm in is really using some type of music to kind of soothe my soul, as a source of inspiration and to be able to keep going. And realizing that other people are looking at me. I once heard the saying that all of life is a stage. So even when you think you're just doing something for yourself, there's almost always someone watching. And so, how is the scene that I'm creating, how is that influencing somebody else? Because there may be somebody else who wants to be where I'm at, and I can show them what that walk looks like.
I think this was mentioned in the first part of the conversation, but affirmations. Develop your own affirmations for yourself. um, I can't remember who mentioned it, but I do a lot of affirmations a lot of times to reprogram whatever thinking I may be having or to reaffirm whatever thinking I want to have. And oftentimes, like I may steal some off, social media, but I often write my own affirmations. I feel that when I write my own affirmations, it resonates with me even that much more because it's coming out of my own soul. And so I think really developing an affirmative practice where either you speak affirmations to yourself in the mirror or you speak affirmations. I love to do them while I'm working out because my endorphins is already pumping and that energy is high. So it's like kind of just creates that frequency on a little bit, just a higher scale, but really affirmative speaking. I've noticed that when I am very affirmative that day, when I'm speaking affirmations, I see like a direct reflection of that in the way that I move through the world. So I definitely would challenge and ask, folks that are listening to do that as well.
Y'all already shared wellness practices. So for part 2, can y'all share something that surprised you that aided in your health, wellness, and care?
I'll go because mine is really quick. I did the Daniel fast. That's my first Daniel fast I did last year, February, and I did not imagine that it would have the type of effect that it had over my life. But one, it changed my diet completely, and two, I kept a journal while I did the Daniel fast, and the amount of information that came out of fasting was unbelievable. So that was something that really, really shook and surprised me. I thought I would just do it and I would learn a little bit of discipline, but no, it just completely shifted and reset my whole being. So that's definitely one for me. That surprised.
The one thing that was most shocking to me is that my blood pressure normalized. When I was exercising, running 5K races, all that stuff, no matter what I did in taking medications, eating healthy, my blood pressure still was a struggle for me to maintain. But all of a sudden, throwing me into the pandemic and adding extra life stress on for whatever reason, I was able to kind of maintain a sense of calm. And all of a sudden, my blood pressure normalized. So I'd say that's the one thing that was shocking to me, a shift during the pandemic. And so meditation, I guess, is working in my fake yoga. So
Real yoga, real yoga.
yes.
I can echo that meditation. And it's not that it surprised me, but I was more disappointed in myself that I hadn't given it a try before. I don't like sitting still for too long. I'm like, as a kid, I was that person who walked into the library and made noise just to see, like if anybody would say something, and then if they did, like how loud could I get? Like I was one of those kids. I'm also an Aquarius, so rules in general don't necessarily go too well with me. But I do enjoy meditation as an adult because I spend a lot of time strategizing, right? And so that takes a lot of brain power. But to actually slow your thoughts down to the point that you filter out some of them is an interesting concept for me. And I'm trying to get better at it in regards to like doing it and implementing it into my daily practice because I do see the benefit and I see how I think more clearly when I do it. But still that discipline area of it where you have to assign time and then you have to stick with the time that you've assigned whether or not something arises is a challenge, but I do see a difference in my lifestyle and my ability to function when I do it.
I would echo that, Sierra, in terms of the word discipline, because when I was teaching full time, I was too busy to do any kind of exercise, any kind of slowing down, because I had courses to teach, I had research to do, and I didn't have time for any of this trivial stuff. But once I realized that I needed to stop and to slow down and start making myself walk every morning before everything else, it lowered my blood pressure significantly. So that was a surprise to me that I had the ability to make myself stop and to do something for me first before I gave out to other students and things like that. So that was a surprise to take care of yourself first and doing the walking and the breathing and the meditating was healing. And we need to heal ourselves first before we can heal others. I've learned that. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Canton, Sierra, Esker-D, and Jasmine for sharing your journey and reflections on wellness, healing, and care. Listeners, if there's anything that registered with you, we'd like to know. You can connect with me, Hannah, on Instagram at AfroGirl by Hannah and allhail_Hannah.
And you can connect with me, Sherella, on Twitter and Instagram at Lirae Journey. And we'll leave all the links in the description box below. So as always, love is real and eternal. In community, peace.